Hello, today's lesson is 3.7% and fractions. We're going to be learning how to write percentages as fractions and fractions as percents while reviewing converting with decimals. If you recall from lesson 3.6, when we want to convert a percent to a decimal, we can divide that percent by 100, and a fast method of that is moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So if we're going to take 34% and change this to a decimal, we can divide this by 100, and on our calculator, 34 divided by 100 is equal to 0.34. We can also just take this 34% and move the decimal 2 places to the left, getting to 0.34 using the fast method. If we want to go from a decimal to a percentage, we're going to multiply that decimal by 100. And again, we can move the decimal places quickly, but this time to the right because we're multiplying, we're getting bigger. So if we want to take this decimal 0.67 and change this to a percentage, we can multiply this by 100, giving us 67%. And the same goes with the fast method. We can move our decimal 2 places to the right, getting us to 67%. This information comes in handy for the lesson that follows. Today we're going to be taking fractions first and changing them into percentages. So we have 2 methods we can use. The first method is to change this fraction to a decimal and then change the decimal to a percent. So first step will be to divide. So we're going to divide 3 divided by 4, which gives us a decimal of 0.75. So we take our numerator divided by our denominator, and that gives us the decimal. Then from there, we can take our decimal and we can multiply that by 100 to change it to a percentage. So 75% is the result of 0.75 times 100. And remember, you can use that fast method as well, moving your decimal 2 places to the right. So not only could you change 3/4 to a percent by first changing it to a decimal, you also have a second method, which is setting up a proportion, and it's called the percent proportion. So what you can do is say 3 is to 4 as what is to 100, because percentages are always expressed out of 100. Percent means per 100. From here, you can solve algebraically, or I'll show a quicker method. So algebraically, 3 times 100 is equal to 4n. 300 divided by 4, because we need to get n isolated, gives us a result of 75%. So the proportion works well. To go a bit faster with the proportion, you can look to cross multiply and divide. You take the denominator multiplied by the numerator and divide by the denominator. 100 times 3 divided by 4 equals 75. So these are the 2 methods that we can use to convert fractions to percentages. The other types of questions for this lesson is converting percentages to fractions and decimals. So the first thing we have to remember whenever we're faced with a percent is that percents are always expressed out of 100. So we can convert 20% to a fraction quite quickly by putting the 20 over 100. So there we have a fraction, but our fraction should be in lowest terms, so we can then divide to reduce this fraction to become 1/5. So our fraction is completed, and now we need to convert 20% to a decimal. Once we have a fraction, we can use the division of numerator divided by denominator to get us to a decimal, 0.2. We could also have used the initial fraction, 20 divided by 100. We could take the percentage and divide by 100, and we're still, of course, going to get the same answer. So as a fraction, 20% is 1/5, and as a decimal, 20% is 0.2. Sometimes we get fractions that are repeaters when we try to change them to percentages. This is no trouble. We have the two methods. First method is to divide the numerator divided by the denominator to get a decimal. And we're going to see that we get 0.222. It just keeps going. So that's a repeater decimal. We want to change our decimal to a percentage by multiplying by 100. So we're going to get 22.2 repeater percent. The second method, if you recall, is making a proportion. So we can take 2/9 is equal to percent over 100. And then either algebraically or quickly, we can multiply 100 times 2 divided by 9. So I'm going to show that method here because it's quite quick. And that again will give us 22.2 repeater percent. For example 4, we are asked to write 33 1/3% as a fraction. So this one looks a little different, but we're changing a percentage to a fraction. So we need to make sure that we place this over 100, just like we did when we converted 20% to a fraction. We put the 20 over 100, and then we reduced the fraction. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take 33 1/3 over 100. But we have a problem because we have this fraction here. So our first step is to convert to improper. So we're going to take the 33 1/3 and we're going to make that into an improper fraction, which is 100 over 3, and we're going to divide that by 100. Our second step is to show this division looking in a way that we can actually begin to solve. So 100 over 3 divided by 100, and we place that 100 over 1. Our third step is to keep, change, and flip. So we're going to take 100 over 3 and change to multiplication and the reciprocal. During step 3, we can cross-reduce. So I can see here that I can divide by 100, getting me down to 1 for the numerator and denominators. Step 4 is to actually multiply numerators times numerators and denominators times denominators. And so we're going to end up with 1/3. Our fraction will be in lowest terms. So 33 1/3% as a fraction is equal to 1 over 3. And you can check this by changing 1 over 3 to a decimal and kind of comparing with the percentage. 1 divided by 3 gives you a decimal of 0.33 repeater. And that would equal 33%. And the repeater part is 1 divided by 3. So we can see that 33 1/3% is equal to 1/3. So for the do together, the first thing we're going to do is see that they want us to convert 18%, a percentage, to a fraction, and they want it in lowest terms. So as soon as we see that we want something as a fraction and it's a percentage, we're going to place it over 100. So we're going to put that 18% over 100, and then we're going to reduce this. We can divide both the numerator and denominator by 2, giving us a fraction of 9 over 50. For number 2, we want to write a fraction as a percentage, so we have the two methods. The first method is to make a decimal and then to convert it into a percent. So decimal means we are dividing 3 divided by 5 on our calculator, which gives 0.6. And then from a decimal to a percent, we're going to be multiplying by 100. Either by doing that on your calculator or moving your decimal 2 places to the right. That will give you 60%. Or your second method is to set up a proportion. 3 over 5 is equal to percent over 100. And from there you can cross multiply and divide. 100 times 3 divided by 5 is going to be equal to n. You can also do this algebraically, a little bit slower, but the steps are good. 5n is equal to 100 times 3. Either way you do it, 300 divided by 5 is what you will get when you set up a proportion, and so the number you're looking for is 60%. You'll get the same answer, but you can choose your method. Number 3 is a bit different. We need to write 12.5% as a fraction in lowest terms. Well, we know we have to make it out of 100, but unfortunately we're not able to put a decimal in a fraction. So what we have to do is convert this decimal to a fraction. 12.5% we can express as 12.5, or we can read it in decimals. 12.5 means 12 and 5 tenths. 12 and 5 tenths, because we're in the tenths place there for the decimal. We know that 5 over 10 and 1 over 2, they're the same thing. So either one of these mixed numbers would be acceptable. I'm going to use 12.5 for this example, and I'm going to create my steps. So my first step is to change to improper. 12.5 becomes 25 over 2 over 100. Now I can do the setup. 25 over 2 divided by 100. Put that over 1. And now I can solve. 25 over 2 multiplied to the reciprocal, which is 1 over 100. And I'm going to reduce. Divide by 25, divide by 25, and multiply. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 4 is 8. So as a fraction, 12.5% is equal to 1 over 8. If you'd like to check your work, you can. You can check your work by taking that fraction and converting it to a decimal. So you can take 1 divided by 8, and on your calculator you're going to get 0.125. From there you can take your 0.125 and you can multiply that by 100, and you will get the percentage, which is 12.5%. So you can check your answers to make sure that they match, that the percentages and the fractions do indeed match each other.